There are 4,509,765 total podcasts registered around the world. And there are over 584 million people who regularly listen to podcasts. And it's been reported that 51% of UK adults now listen to at least one podcast every month. And that must be you, because you're here. Now, since starting this podcast, I've been introspecting about why I started it and why I keep going. And when I listen to podcasts created by non-celebrities, I think the same of them. With me this week to discuss the psychology of podcasts and the people that create them is Sam Webster Harris. Sam hosts the incredibly popular Growth Mindset Psychology podcast and has recently started his new show called How to Change the World, The History of Innovation. And Sam is a very rare beast among podcasters in that he earns a living through his podcasts. So Sam, this is quite a meta podcast, isn't it, that we're doing? We're doing two podcasters talking about the psychology of podcasts.
Yeah, it's a philosophical approach. Why do we do it? Why does anyone do it? Why do we do anything?
So the motivation is what probably it made me interested in this. I suppose because I started this podcast and I'm 20 episodes, probably 21 episodes in now. So I've got past that initial 6. And somebody once told me that a lot of podcasts never go past 6.
Yeah, I think it's like 90% don't get past 6 and like 99% can get past 20.
Okay. So I'm just past the 20.
Yeah.
How many are you at now?
I don't know, 500 and something. I deleted like a good 100 of them that were embarrassing. But a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's really interesting to chat with you, because you've been through 500 episodes and recordings. And when did you start?
2017 December on my sofa with a friend.
Yeah.
It took
why
me
did you start?
a long time to even get something out. I was listening to a podcast and was very businessy, psychology interested and bored of only hearing Americans talk, and figured that I had ideas that seemed to be like other people, but just from a different angle, and were worth like sharing / asking other people about. Like there's just lots of British entrepreneurs and other things that were cool. And the other thing was at university, I worked for like the university newspaper. Like I just randomly was like, oh yeah, sure. I could interview musicians. They just had like a thing being, do you want to like go to free gigs for interviewing musicians, like writing a short article? And then I got to meet like famous people just because I agreed to write like 100 words, and I got to go to lots of gigs for free. And I realized how easy it is to get hold of interesting, famous people just by asking them. And was like, maybe if I just say I run a podcast, I'll get hold of interesting people. And I did. Like within a few episodes, I had like the CTO of PayPal and TransferWise on the show. And I was just some random bloke who had no legitimacy to be doing that.
Yeah.
And so I carried on.
I found the same in the fact that, not particularly famous people, but famous in my world, that if I phoned up an academic psychologist and just said, look, could I have a chat about your paper? They would think it was a bit weird. But if I said, look, could I chat about your paper for a recording of a podcast? They'd be more likely to go, oh yeah, that's absolutely fine. That sounds great. But, very much selfishly, I get to meet and chat to people I wouldn't have access to normally. And that's... again, talking about motivation, that's an external motivation. I get to meet other people. So it isn't the podcast per se, it's the opportunity it opens the doors, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%. It's just like the frame that you enter people's world in. And if you want to have a fun conversation with someone that, like, I just felt like I would have fun conversations with these people who I felt I deserved to be friends with or something. And they're obviously busy and, running some fund or whatever, and don't have time for someone that wants to buy them coffee, but they'll have time to go on your show if you're offering something back to them.
Yeah.
And
I love that. You deserve to be friends with them. Because you've got that common characteristic of both inquisitiveness, innovation, and you've got that theme that your podcast has, and you can start to speak to people of that common mindset. I'd not thought of it like that, but yeah, it is, isn't it? You almost want to be friends with them, and it gives you that excuse. It feels a bit pathetic, but it's true. You do feel like that.
Yeah, definitely. And you do get to have a bit of a sort of intimate conversation about things that they've probably never spoken about before, if they're not someone that interviews all the time, or if they are, then it's on you to make a more interesting concept for the show that takes you to places. Like I was just on someone's show who does, it's called The Storied Recipe, and she asks people about a recipe that's important to them, that like some people maybe don't have a meal that's important to them, but like I knew exactly what it was when I even heard her talking about her concept. Like I used to vomit a lot as a child because I didn't like so much food and I was forced to eat stuff. Like I didn't even like chocolate cake, but my nan made this cake once that was like this coconut pineapple cake, and I loved it. And she didn't stop making it for me for 10 years. Like every time I saw her, she'd make it for me. And I just had this like crazy emotional journey that I went on with her, telling the story just because she had like a good concept that no one had. And yeah, so I think podcasts can be a really nice place to just explore stuff with people when you have the right concept. And like you've got a cool one of, you just get to go down angles of psychology of why do people do these things, or what are we thinking, which just goes beyond the average talk to someone over coffee.
Yeah, it does. And especially people who can do the research. That's what I always like. I can find out firsthand how they did it, what they did it, what's coming up next, what's their next bit of research.
Yeah.
And you start to get answers to the puzzles that I have in my brain of why people do what they do a lot of the time. One of the puzzles I think I have about podcasts, which is why I wanted to sort of talk about it, was the effort that's involved with making a podcast. I think I was naive at the beginning, that I just thought, well, how hard can it be? You just talk, okay, buy a microphone, and you've got the expense side of it as well. So yes, I've got a microphone here, which I paid for, stand that attaches to the desk, and then you go down rabbit holes of headphones to wear and all of this. And I was watching YouTube videos late at night about all the equipment you should buy, webcams for YouTube and all of this. And suddenly it's all racking up expense.
Yes.
And that's just the expense bit. Then you've got the organising of guests, which again, whilst I have just been saying it's quite a nice thing to be able to speak with guests, the organising of it to get people to agree at a time that's right for everyone is, and a lot of people don't respond. You send an email out and say, I'd love to interview you about such and your paper, and they just don't get back to you. Then I found out quite a lot of academics were their institutions are blocking my emails, so they weren't even getting it. So it was like, how do you get through to people in that sort of side? And then editing, afterwards, again, it's not just recording, done, send it live. There's lots of bits that you want to cut out and make it as succinct as possible. And then you've got the gauntlet of promotion. So, I mean, being brutally honest, let's talk through what's your typical process of producing one episode, I suppose? What are the hidden things that people don't ever know about?
I feel like just because it's on my mind, I have to say it, that I have to apologize for the fact that I completely messed up like 3 times in a row our interview. And this is the third or the fourth attempt of actually having an interview?
Third attempt. Yeah,
okay,
third attempt.
Yeah, we've had to cancel twice.
What I'll say about
one time I just
organising,
didn't turn up.
I wasn't having a go, I promise.
Sorry about that. But yeah, it was the worst case, which I don't know why.
No, you responded to the original email, so
yes.
that's the worst case. The people who just don't ever get back to me. It's a bit annoying. They could just say, no, thanks very much, but not for me.
Yes. Good. Anyway, the question was, what are the things that people don't expect?
Yeah, I guess what's the process of you producing one episode of your podcast?
Yes, so it has changed. Despite me saying how much I love the chance to meet and interview people, I do very few interviews these days and mostly entirely self-record and write them. I went through a phase of just sticking on a mic and having some questions in front of me, which was faster, but I still was not as eloquent a speaker as I liked and full of mistakes, whereas I actually just really enjoyed writing, and I started writing a newsletter and realized that I could just add to them a little bit. And I had this really good podcast, and that's when my podcast actually took off. Like I've had like 3 different levels of it growing. And that's where it really had like the most recent larger amount of growth. And it was just way more efficient. And I felt more in control of what I was actually putting out there. And so mostly now these days I write, like I'll have an idea which may have been just in the back of my head for 6 months, and eventually it'll come around to being done. And other times I'll just have an idea, like I write it super fast in like a few hours and put it together, research it, make it like a story, add some interesting things, record it, and then it's done. And it normally takes 1 to 2 days for my psychology show.
Yeah.
But then I took on an ambitious project with my new show about the history of all innovation, where episodes are supposed to take me 2 weeks, but they often take me more like a whole month to write, because I have to read like 2 or 3 books. And I feel like I'm writing an entire book chapter each time.
I mean, that's a lot though, isn't it? I think, again, I can't predict what the listeners are going to think, but 1 to 2 days in order to create a podcast, which is what, 40 minutes to an hour? Is that where you...
20 to 30 minutes.
Oh,
if it's like
okay.
a 40, 45 minute, maybe it takes a little bit longer than that.
Yeah. But on the other side, you've got the one which takes a month to prepare
yes.
to do one episode of a podcast.
That one, it's crazy detailed. And if you think about, let's say you listen to a episode of This American Life or like these really highly produced podcasts, I'm trying to make something closer to that. But when you listen to their end credits, they have like an executive producer, like 3 different editors, and like, so like a sound is like, they'll have like 10 people working on that show just to get it to release weekly. And like, I have me, and that's it.
Yeah, that's my point with talking about all this effort that's involved behind it. It's not to get everyone to feel sorry for us. It's why do we do it? Because the effort versus reward. What's the reward part of doing all of that for you?
I don't know. I think in the same way, if you just think about writing, people say you should write to understand your thoughts and to learn stuff. So it's a really powerful way to organize and structure your thoughts. But you have, on any given day, if you're writing just for yourself, there's no reason that you have to write. Whereas if you have some form of output, there's a reason to keep yourself consistent in doing it. And if you want to explore something and understand it and master it, it's actually really helpful to have a public form of accountability in a place where you're putting like, okay, here's my grand thesis. I'm going to like learn and teach everything about growth mindset. Or for my new show, I'm literally teaching the entire history of innovation from FIRE to the present day. And so like, I'm learning everything about the topic of innovation, which includes banking and economics, like law along the process. And it's cool to want to master something and have the accountability to do it and tell it in a cool way.
Yeah.
So that part is really helpful. I personally think I started a different podcast with a friend where over COVID, we read like 1 book a week and chatted about it. Sometimes it's been 1 book a month. Now it's more like 1 book every 6 months, but it was really nice to have the podcast as an accountability for us to just go and do it. Whereas otherwise it'd just be 2 blokes that like reading. And we maybe would have texted each other and that would have been about it. And there's something about the public accountability that makes it a more coherent thing that gets done. And I think podcasting isn't, despite everything we've said, it's still easier than making like video. Maybe a newsletter would be an easier one, but it can be low friction if you don't put too much effort into it. Obviously, you can add all the extra effort you want, but I think it's much more satisfying and allows the space to add nuance that it's not like a hyper-produced Instagram reel or something where you're just trying to get like the condensed form of something that's just trying to go viral. You can just really explore and talk about your fears or like difficulties in like a nuanced way where you don't have to have a perfect answer.
Yeah. So if it's a case for you that it helps with self-exploration, it sounds like a very personal mission for you to learn and take on subjects and be accountable for it. Does it matter if nobody listens and you don't get listeners and you don't see your figures going up? Because if it really was that, it shouldn't matter.
Yes. Initially, it didn't matter too much to me. And my metric was more when I started, like, have I got to have cool conversations with people? Am I like building my network? And that was fine. And it depends on how much you want to invest. Like after a while, like, it got big enough for me to have a few advertisers. So I paid for someone to edit it for a while, which was great. I didn't lose any money or make any money. After a while, it was starting to cost me slightly each year. And then I managed to grow it and it was okay. And like now it's my full-time job. So it has to have some form of reach for me to still be able to do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to be doing it.
Yeah.
Essentially speaking. But different people have different motivations. I think it's good for when you start to just have the motivation of doing it for the love of whatever else you get out of it, and not money or views. Otherwise, I think you're probably going to fail. But to keep on doing it over 2 years, I think most people kind of get a bit bored or have learned what they wanted to learn after 2 years. And then it's a question of like, are you trying to sell books, or do you have advertisers, or is there like, are you a VC and you get to connect with people where you make like 100 times more money from the connections than you do from the actual like advertising or something? And then I don't think there's anything wrong with having other incentives in the long term besides just pure love and joy and happiness and learning, etc.
Yeah. But does it make a difference, I suppose, to your... Again, I'm interested in motivation, and in my mind, as you're talking, I'm trying to think. You started off talking very, I suppose, intrinsically motivated, that it was about self-actualization, furthering, progression, competence, all of these sort of words that are a huge part of motivation theories, such as self-determination theory.
Yes.
When you start becoming professional and getting paid for something which was originally intrinsically motivated, things can happen. And it reminds me of a very classic psychology experiment back in the 70s, where they got children who loved drawing. Children generally love drawing. But then they promised one group a reward. They paid these children to draw pictures, and another group they just left on their own. And the group who were paid for it actually lost interest in drawing, because it suddenly became something different because of the external reward being offered. Do you feel with your podcast the need to get, with sponsorship, money, and become a job for you, has changed it for you?
Yes, it has changed it for me, but also I think there's a limit. I remember when I was younger, I had like targets on how much money I wanted, and I was on target until I was about 24. Like I'd made like $250,000 at like 24, and was like, I've been really stressed for the last 5 years, and I didn't want to get more stress. So I basically didn't make any money beyond that for 10 years. And I think the same with my podcast. I grew it to the point where like I could pay rent, and then I stopped trying to grow and just like followed my interests again. As soon as it's okay, I have got bored about the growing, and like I haven't done any SEO optimization or like other strategies. It's pretty hard to try, and you can't just virally hit on a point that gives you growth. You just have to follow your interests, and that's the only way you keep going. Yeah, that
delayed gratification with podcasting almost, you would think, goes against it, because you don't get that immediate gratification. And as human beings, we hate delayed gratification. I mean, the classic experiment was the Michel in the 50s, the marshmallow experiment.
Yeah,
with kids who had to basically resist eating the marshmallow while the scientist, in inverted commas, goes out of the room. And when they come back again, they can have 2 marshmallows. Now, most of the children ate the marshmallow. They couldn't resist that delayed gratification. But the ones who did are the ones who you are correlated with more success in life. So it was a longitudinal study. And so the ones that did delay eating the marshmallow went on to have higher bank balances, better jobs, more sustained relationships, and all these other variables that the scientists looked at. But podcasting is, like, say, that delayed gratification. So are we those children that didn't eat the marshmallow? Is that who makes podcasts?
So, some of us, for sure. I think the independent podcasters that are doing it and playing the long game, I say they probably would be. But there's other motivations I think we can go into. I know for myself, when I was reading that test, I was like, what do you mean people ate the marshmallow straight away? Of course you would like double down and take 2. I've never... If I had a superpower, it would be delayed self-gratification.
But just in defense of those people, from an evolutionary psychology perspective, taking the sugar hit when you can get it, it leads to increased survival.
For sure.
That's why we do that.
I also evolutionarily think I suffer the consequences as well of not always. I think I used to think too long term.
And the celebrities, I think, are slightly different, aren't they? And you get a huge amount of celebrity podcasts now as an extension of their job anyway.
Yes.
They host a radio show or presenting on television, and to maintain their image and their brand on every type of media, they need now to have a podcast as well. So I suppose in the motivation puzzle that I've got about why people do podcasts, I understand that more, because like you say, they have agents, they have people making them do this to keep their career on track. But for us, who, as far as I'm aware, you don't host the One Show. I'm not on any quiz show on an ITV afternoon. I don't have a personality. I'm not famous, so I don't have to maintain that. But then, so I feel like I'm the more cynical of the two of us here, because I always think, well, are people after fame? Do they want that? Are we struggling to reach what the celebrities have got? Do we want celebrity status? Is that what we're reaching for? And is that also linked to money? Do people see this now as a route to become rich? That influencer culture is something which young people are noted to aspire to these days. I'm too old to have that sort of aspiration, but we still have money. So is it fame and money? Is that still a motivator, do you think? First of all, for you personally, and then if you can sort of cast your mind out to maybe other podcasters as well.
So for myself, yeah, I think it would be in the same way, like I love going to the gym, right? And there's so many benefits for it, for like my long-term health and my mental health, but like I also like to look good. And I think, like, again, like fame and money, of course, like there are other things that I get from podcasting. Like I do feel like I have so many chaotic thoughts that I like to organize and structure, that it's just so nice to have a format where I get to spend time doing that. And I hate normal jobs. I hate being told what to do. I hate having a structure around when I can't do things, and I can just decide how my day goes.
Yeah.
The wider question of like, why do people do it? I think everyone, in the same way, like the reason everyone goes to the gym is because they do want to look better, ultimately. And if they think that they aren't, they're probably lying. I think anyone that starts a podcast is at least hoping for some form of fame. Yes.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because there is that fame, as you identified, of being recognized by people you don't know for what you've done. That's a certain level of fame. And I suppose the more stereotypical description of fame is that, whether it be music, television, movies, it's what that level of fame is. But what you were talking about there resonated more with, I guess, proving to yourself that you've got a self-identity that you're comfortable with. That it becomes a reinforcement rather than wanting to be recognized. You want to feel, and again, I'm putting words in your mouth, so do challenge me, but you want to feel that you are who you are. You want to be that philosopher, that thinker, that what have you. So you need to put something out there which proves that you are. Yeah,
there's definitely a form of known like respect. There's like a study where people love being in places where they are slightly superior in some way or other. Like they gravitate to like hobbies or things where they just naturally are sort of higher up the rank of things.
Okay.
And like they actually just feel like you feel safer. In the same way, like obviously we think about money because of that's like the obvious one of how we rank ourselves. But like, in the scientific domain, people like, they care about how many scientific studies they publish. Like it's just like an easy ranking where they feel more competent. Like when you're around people that respect you and you have a higher reputation and you're just look cooler, it's a nice place to be.
And that links to, again, as I try and always do, self-determination theory comes to mind, linking to a psychological theory about that. And you said competence there, because self-determination theory has been around for a long time in psychology, created by two psychologists, Ryan and DC. There's three basic areas which they outline people need to be motivated to do something. And one of those is autonomy. So the freedom to control what you're doing. Another one is competence, that feeling that you'll have mastery and growth, improving yourself and your skills. And then the final one is relatedness, the sense of connection with the community, people around you. And when you think of those three things in terms of podcasting, actually, that freedom to control your own content, your schedule, your creative vision, the topics, who you speak with, all of that's part of autonomy, and you get that in podcasting. I guess, in competence, you get to improve your skills, whether it is storytelling, public speaking, interviewing skills, all of that gives you that sense of competency.
Yeah, and your domain that you're working in is something that even if you're not that competent when you start, you become more competent and you build.
Exactly. So I imagine back in 2017, you were a very different person and podcaster to who you are today.
Yeah, for sure. And like some of the stuff, like I was trying to build more competency in entrepreneurship and things, and I just lost the interest, got to the level where I was like, oh, it's fine. I don't think I need to prove anything anymore, which is partly why I stopped interviewing so many entrepreneurs.
The third one is just relatedness, that connection with others. Now, for my podcast, I decided that it was going to be interviews because the excuse I have of having a podcast gives me the chance to speak with people and say, hey, can we chat about your paper? Can we chat about your theory? And the podcast is almost incidental. And I like to think that I don't care about the figures so much. I didn't to start with. However, it's sort of grown. And, when I appeared in Heat magazine and I had my face in Heat magazine, I was like, wow. And I showed my mum, and my mum was like, like a lot of mums, slightly baffled about what a podcast was, and asked me very clear, blunt questions such as, well, how much money do you make from that? And I'm like, well, nothing at all. In fact, I lose money because it could be time I use to earn money somewhere else, and I've had to borrow the equipment and time learning to edit and things like that. So no, I don't make any money, I lose money. And she was like sort of nodding but puzzled. And then it's like, why do you do it then? And what a brilliant psychological insight from my mum, because I made me go, yeah, why? But it is that connection, that relatedness to others, peer groups, I suppose, of who I would like to speak to. But you did the opposite. You started or you did interview people, but then decided that you didn't want to do that. You wanted to do more of your narration and your story. So where did you go in that thought process?
One, I think I am a slower thinker. Rather, like some people, you might have like in fitness, you talk about like slow twitch muscle fibers and fast twitch, or like some people are sprinters and some people are like long distance runners. I feel like I'm a more long distance thinker than I have the odd really good thought, but most of them come to me after a lot of pre-thought rambling around, and in real time, I don't think I'm as good as I am, and I get a lot more out of myself by spending the time writing than I do trying to come up with genius things instantly. Like for my new show, it would be easier and faster if I just interviewed the author of one of the books that I read for each episode. Yeah. And I could probably be making an episode a week, and that would be really good. And it would still be a good thing to listen to as I follow through it, but it would be less, I don't think I'd remember half as much, or have done I wouldn't be the person that I wouldn't know half as much as I do from doing it the way I am doing it. And I wouldn't be better at telling stories or all the other things I want to get out of it.
Yeah. So again, that seems to come back to that. It's a tool for self-actualization for you.
Yeah.
That's a nice way of thinking about it. And you make me feel so cynical, Sam, because, again, I approached this, and the reason I asked the question at the beginning, it was genuinely because I don't understand why a lot of people start podcasts but then continue when they see low figures, listeners, downloads, whatever statistic they use, but they continue nonetheless. And so it started to me to go down, I guess, theories like signaling theory, is a big thing in psychology. Most people would know signaling theory from the idea of the peacock's tail. From an evolutionary standpoint, the peacock's tail is dangerous because it means it can't run away from predators as well. But the benefit is that an unhealthy peacock can't sustain a beautiful tail. So the male, it's signaling to the female that I'm a healthy peacock and therefore we can pass our genes on, but it has the downside as well. Now, with podcasting, it could be that sort of, it's the modern day peacock tail. It's costly public display of expertise and intellectual vitality. And it's a question which I'm going to basically ask you in a minute. Is it for you? But I'm going to start with me, because if I was brutally honest, it probably would be. It probably would be something that I'm trying to signal to people that, hey, I'm interested in this topic. I am an expert, I suppose, in the area of behavioral psychology. And I want to tell people that. And that sounds really selfish. But if I was brutally honest with myself, that probably is a big motivation for me to do this. But what about you?
For me, I feel one thing I have struggled with is I do like to know everything. And that by default makes you someone that is not an expert. And for the growth mindset, for example, I haven't been that interested in coaching people on mindset, or I just explore all psychology. And it's not easy for me to start a business that goes with what I do. Whereas I know other people that go specifically on how am I going to teach you this one thing? And I've spoken to so many podcasters that do run a business out of what they do in some form of coaching or other thing. Yeah. And as soon as I have felt like I've had any expertise on something, I usually gone on to something else. So I'm hoping with the new show, maybe I do have some form of expertise in innovation and stuff, but it's so broad still that it's a bit of a random one, apart from more just thinking bigger for people. I think I somehow could be coaching people around how do you do something that's really world big as opposed to small big. So yeah, there's for sure a desire to conspicuously take on the cost of doing something that makes you an expert. The show, it's a 10-15 year project. It's clearly a costly signaling feature that I'm putting so much effort into it that by de facto should make me an expert in something and kind of be worth listening to. So on one sense, you could say that's very much a peacocky thing. But for other people, I do wonder in terms of why they keep doing it. I'm not sure if it's necessarily to do with the signaling cost or also naivety.
Has having a podcast for you changed the way that you're perceived in your either your professional or your social circles? Do people talk to you differently or speak to you differently? Or
I've never. I think I'm at the calmest place of telling people what I do. I've always done 5 different things at once, and trying to explain it to people has always been a mess. Until more recently, where I have been I'm just a podcaster, and people go, "Really?" And I go, "Yeah, I am." It's still a mild sense of surprise, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool," and they usually want to know about it. And yeah, it's quite nice.
Is that the genuine reaction? They want to know more about it, or do you get more cynical people going, "What is that a real job?"
Yeah, I do get some cynical people, especially my podcast used to be just called Growth Mindset, and people who didn't know necessarily that it was a psychology term were a bit "Oh, you're a mindset-y believer achiever style." Some people thought I'd be like that, and I'm like, whoa, it's not a woo-woo thing. It is, sure, I go into philosophy and all this stuff, but I generally stick with science and useful things that are helpful for people, as opposed to just blowing smoke up people's asses.
And I suppose you introduce yourself to people as a podcaster. There are other people out there who'd introduce themselves as a YouTuber or maybe as an influencer, and I kind of wonder, is there a difference between the podcasters and the other types of people who make their money through media these days?
Yeah, I would think so. As an influencer sounds a bit like you're constantly taking photos of yourself, or
well, a lot of the time they're pushing products, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
People who go and buy the shoes or the makeup or whatever it might be.
Yeah, YouTuber, I just want to know what they do, because they could be making a really arty, fun channel. They could be doing dares. They could be doing anything on YouTube. Podcaster, you just expect that they're probably having longer conversations, but it's definitely just a less common way of actually making money, because it's not very easy to make money doing it.
Yeah. And another thing I thought, and again, my cynical side of it, is it now almost necessary for people to have a podcast, because one of the reactions I've got when I said I do a podcast, people go, "Oh, not another one," because the amount of people starting one, either through their business or personally, is immense. Let alone the celebrities who have all got one of their own, through cooking or whatever it might be. And it reminded me of a concept called Darwin economics, that, and it's very similar to the signaling theory of the peacock, that you can all be doing something which leads other people to have to do it as well. And then none of you are better off because suddenly you're all in the same position you were, but you're putting a lot more effort into things. And as an example, just to try and flesh that out, if you imagine you're at a pop concert and you're all sat down.
Yeah, sure.
And then the first row gets up. And then the second row have to go, well, I can't see anymore, so I'm going to have to get up as well. And then so does the third row, fourth row. And suddenly you've created this chain reaction that everyone in the concert hall's now stood up. Now, your view is identical to when you were sat down, but you're all less comfortable than you originally were. Yeah. But you had no choice in that. And no individual really can choose to sit down again because they are now much worse off because the group isn't going to adhere to them.
Sure.
And I can almost see that process happening with podcasts, that as soon as it got to a certain critical mass, people thought, well, I have to have one as well. And especially, I think, people entering the job market who want a CV, who can stand out with the employer to say, I am actually proactive in the area, whether it be HR or whatever it might be, and I've got a podcast. And so everyone has one now. And that maybe I'm being cynical. What do you think?
I think in some ways, yes. But I would also say it's complicated and not a perfect analogy. Like, in the one sense, you say like everyone has the same view. I would say people don't have the same view. Shorter people probably have a better view while sat down. Taller people have a better view when stood up. Well, they have the same view, but like there's like a slight imbalance suddenly. And like, I think with podcasting again, there's like a greater huge imbalance in terms of if you're in the top 1%, you're doing okay. If you're in the top 0.1%, you just have like crazy, all sorts of opportunities flying your way and everything. Whereas if you're in the bottom 90%, you're like just like any other person. Like it's pretty much a zero benefit, just as like cost to you. Yeah, I don't think there's much benefit unless there's a specific reason. Like you said, like I think it's actually a very good one if you want to add it to your CV and you are trying to enter a specific market that you maybe didn't have that much expertise in, or if you're against like a bunch of other people that are leaving university and you're trying to get into specifically HR, and you've also started a podcast on HR and other people haven't done anything else besides just the university degree, yeah, you look better for sure. Like if I've got nothing else to rank you on, it's a great conspicuous signal. But I don't think like over COVID was actually peak podcast starting because people were at home with nothing to do and wanting to connect. But like, there was a real surge and it's really flattened off, and there's not half as many podcasts around as you think they are. Like I started the first Growth Mindsets podcast. For a while there was about 10, and now I am the only one again.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's not. There's not as many podcasts as you might think there are. There's a lot of new ones coming out from networks and stuff. So you're constantly going to have them advertised at you. But in terms of the total, it's only growing like 5 or 10% a year. It's not as ridiculous as you might think it is.
Interesting. I'm just going to go back to a point you made there, because I think it was beautiful. The imbalance. So going to the example of standing up at a concert, you created an imbalance that wasn't there before, that the taller people now have the better view and the shorter people are now worse off than they were sat down. I love that because it also started me thinking about the difference between introverts and extroverts. That are podcasters, YouTubers, influencers pushing out the introverts?
No, I think a lot of them are introverts. Basically, I am an introvert. I know quite a few YouTubers. The ones that are super like dynamic in people's faces and talking a lot are more extroverted, sure, but I think it can favor the introverts a bit who take the time to go and do all that stuff. Whereas like often extroverts get that much in real life, so they don't have such a need. Whereas introverts are more like to sit at home on their laptop and mess around with learning how to do YouTube and podcasting, and they might get more benefits out of that. So I don't think it is necessarily true.
Yeah. So it acts as a leveler almost. And like you say, sitting home writing something, which then you just have to read out in the privacy of your own home, really, rather than standing up and doing it somewhere else, can be something an introvert does.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to get over that initial hurdle of the perception of it being something which is you putting yourself out there.
Yes. Well, yeah, especially if you think of like TikTok.
I just want to move on to the follow-up points to where we mentioned at the very beginning of how many people give up podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what the stat was you shared about how many people get to 20.
Yeah, it's like 1%.
Is it like 1%?
On the start. Could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's about that. I know the number of people go beyond 6 and then 20 is a huge drop off. And as you said, you were one of many growth mindset podcasts, and now you've outlasted all of them. So burnout is something which is quite interesting. You know, that pressure to consistently produce content, to write it, to edit it, and then promoting it. And I find the promoting difficult, having to go into TikTok. And then you've got criticisms and comments, TikTok especially. I've had people say things which you go, wow. I mean, I do a podcast about psychology. It's not, I mean, I hope it's interesting, but it's not political in any way to get the vitriol and the hatred of some of the comments. You go, whoa. I mean, the most comments I had was on the Psychology of Cats episode. So it was talking about cats. It was talking about how to litter train cats. But one comment that my guest, Dr. Claude Bieta, mentioned was that cats are perfectly functional to be indoors, and they can be indoor cats as long as you give them the 5 areas that they need in their life. Active play, places to defecate, eat safely, and all there's 5 areas he's identified. As long as you do that, they'll be perfectly happy as indoor cats. The number of comments on those videos from people absolutely hating the idea that cats should stay indoors, to the point it was abuse. And it just made me go, wow, why are you so angry at me for putting this podcast out there? And it made me think, why do I want to do this? Have you had similar things? What's your experience with the wider public, I suppose? Yeah, something I have noticed on LinkedIn and YouTube, I haven't put anything on TikTok really, is that if you want engagement, say something wrong, like this is the slightest mistake I've just done on something, instantly you get so many comments that I've done something wrong, or if it's something that people believe is wrong, whether it's even this is like an opinionated, you just get so much more engagement than just something that they kind of like agree with, or is neither here nor there, and it is fine, which is interesting.
As somebody then who has 2 podcasts, been doing it since 2017, very successful, and earns your living from it, what advice would you give people who are starting out thinking of doing it, so they get past that 6 and the 20 and keep going and get what they need from it?
Yeah, I definitely would say make it easy. So you mentioned earlier that you do all the promotion. Like I don't, basically.
Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong.
I didn't enjoy it, so I just stopped, and it's fine. Like it's very hard to convert people from different formats to podcasting. Like podcasting is a very slow growth. Like it does make a slight difference. So if you want to grow as absolute maximum speed, doing all that extra work helps, but it doesn't help anywhere near as much as getting a good format and making a good show. And like I would spend most of your time on, if you're going to put extra effort in anywhere, I would put it on like, what is your brand? What is the experience someone has in the first 2 minutes of the episode, and like knowing what they're going to get, and do you consistently deliver quality? And I wouldn't worry about any of the marketing or stuff that is like extra. And I would the quality comes from like enjoying yourself and repetition and like learning from it. And I would really just focus on being able to enjoy it primarily, and making it as easy as you can to get to like those first 20, and keeping it shorter, like reducing the amount of editing that you're going to give yourself, etc. That takes a lot longer than you might think. And then like the other side of burnout is the continued effort without it going anywhere or change. Like if you're just going to get locked into a format and it doesn't feel like growth in some area, then something needs to change. So like as I stopped feeling growth on like, or desiring growth in like my entrepreneurship side, I changed to something else where I felt personal growth. So like maybe after a while you've met all the scientists that you really want to talk to about their books, and perhaps you change format slightly, or like it's fine to slightly morph your podcast concept over time to something that suits you better. And then it's easy to keep going, because like I would say the growth mindset as a show has been like 4 different shows over the time that I've done it. And that was one of the things I thought about with the new show of, I didn't want like an infinite content wheel where I was just always doing the same sort of thing of just reading another biography of a scientist. And so I feel like every year I'm basically talking about a different era in humanity, and there's obviously going to be a lot of similarities, but there's also just a different level of history that I'm in and talking about. So I get to explore very different things continuously. So it is a format that stays consistent but changes. So I'm hoping it stays interesting. I might, after 5 years or something, be like, you know what, I'm really bored, and stop or change it.
Change it again.
Who knows?
For me, I'm going to ask, I think probably to finish off, I thought we could suggest some podcasts that we think deserve a listen. And the one I'm listening to at the moment, which I think, if anyone's interested in the TV show The Traitors, it's a huge amount of psychology about it. And I recorded an episode with 3 psychologists from the University of Chester, and they have their own podcast called The Psychology of the Traitors. And each episode, when the TV show comes out, they then the next day record their podcast where 3 of them talk about what psychology did you see in that episode, who was doing what,
nice.
Did it work, and all of that.
Yeah,
it's brilliant. They are so good, and it's better than the Traitors extra show that they put on the telly. I can't remember what it's called. It's much better than that, because actually they do get into the nitty gritty of what they're doing. And there's like the Celebrity Traitors is out now, so they're doing episodes on the Celebrity Traitors. So I don't think they get enough listeners. So I would totally recommend that everyone goes and gets The Psychology of the Traitors.
Cool.
What about you?
Have not watched it, but I do like podcasts that explore the psychology of things that you can relate to, that aren't just talking about someone and like shitting on someone in public. Sorry, excuse my French. Being mean about people, or things that you can learn from, like the Psychology in Seattle. He often does that with TV shows, or like Game of Thrones. He had really good ones where he like went deep into like the psychology of different characters, that you learn so much more from things that you already understand and are bought into. So that sounds great. If you do watch The Traitors, thanks. I like Mindset Neuroscience with Stephanie Fay.
Okay.
I think she's growing well, but not a huge podcast.
Sam, thank you so much. I've learned how to change my own podcast, I think, and I'll be adapting things as I go forward. Is there anything else that we didn't discuss?
I don't know. I mean, I guess, would you recommend starting a podcast to other people?
Oh, gosh. Not if it's just following others, or just a knee-jerk reaction to you think everyone else is doing it. I think if you have, either you have something to say or you have something to learn. So I think somebody starting and they do want to do it that way, yes, you do get a lot from it. If you are doing it because you want to be famous, you want money, and you think it's an easy way to suddenly get fame or be rich, no.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of people feel like they might have something to say but don't know what it is, and just leaning on if you have something to learn, just focus on that. And I think that's a much better way. And over time, you might have something to say afterwards. And that's cool. Well said.
Yeah, yeah. People can obviously spend time with you on your podcasts. Go on, give yourself a plug of your 2 podcasts.
Sure. So I run the Growth Mindset Psychology Show, where we talk about science of self-improvement and philosophy of a life well lived. And then the How to Change the World is my new show, where I'm covering the entire history of innovation to then work out what's going on in the present and talk about the future. And every episode is a bit more like artistically produced and takes me forever to make. And I'll try and do it faster.
So how often does the history one come out?
Hypothetically, every 2 weeks. In reality, more like once a month. I'm working on it.
Fair enough. Brilliant. Sam, it's been lovely to chat. Thank you very much for all your insight into that. I've enjoyed it.